Hi, welcome and welcome back to That Girl's Quilting Threads and Things. Today's project is going to be a little different. Come and join me and see how I make a Quillow. I found a couple of YouTube channels that gave some instructions on how to build the Quillow, and I've modified it a little bit to accommodate my needs for my blanket. So join me, and maybe even you can make a Quillow of your own. Let's go! The first thing that we're going to do before we make our Quillow is we need to fold the blanket up or the quilt into such a size that is our desirable pillow shape. So you can fold it in a number of different ways. One of the things about this blanket here, so I took a fleece or minky style blanket that was gifted to me by my beautiful sister, and the binding on the blanket was coming off. So I actually took and I rebound the blanket to reinforce the edges. But one of the things about this blanket that's going to make it a little bit more unique to the to today's project is that it has large rounded corners. So we have no sharp right angle corners. When I decided to fold this blanket up in order to get the right measurements, I folded it in thirds and then proceeded to fold it in halves so that I would have a nice desirable position on the blanket where the pillow pocket will live. Now I'm ready to go ahead and get the measurements that I need so that I can build my pillow pocket. So the first measurement that we want to do is we want to take just a regular tape measure, and we want to go from tabletop over the top and down to the bottom. All right, and we want to get our measurement for that. So I'm measuring this at about 21 inches. Okay, and yes, it's a little snug, but not much. So if I lift up on it, you'll see that there's just only a slight indentation. So that's the first measurement. Then when you take that measurement, so mine was 21 inches. Now I want to add another inch to that. So that's 22 inches. But I'm going to add a secondary, when I go to attach the pillow pocket, I'm not only going to attach it by sewing all the way around, I'm going to add one extra stitching line on the inside of that just to reinforce the pillow pocket's stability onto the blanket. So my measurement then will be 22.5. So I'm actually adding 1.5 inches. So again, tabletop over the top of the blanket and down to the bottom. I got 21 inches. I add 1.5 inches. Then the next measurement that you want to take, measure the circumference of your blanket. And it's okay if you pull it a little snug, right? Because if this is a pillow and you're going to lean on it, maybe you want it to be a little firm. So I have a measurement of 35. So my finish measurement, keeping the same step and the same process, is to add 1.5 inches to the measurement. Now, if your fold is rectangular versus square, mine is nearly square. If your fold is considered rectangular, then you might consider taking your measurements from the longer portions of it. This will make sure that you have a pillow pocket large enough to accommodate your blanket. So now that we have our measurements, now we're ready to cut the different pieces of fabric needed to create our pillow pocket. So since my measurements come out to be 22.5 and 36.5, I have already cut my fabrics at 22.5 by 36.5. Now when I first originally did the measurements, I had it folded a little bit differently, and I built my pieces already. And that's the beauty of making a pillow pocket. You can either use plain fabric or you can design your own pillow pocket fronts. Okay, so what I have done is my measurements will be a little bit off. I will have to do a little bit of trimming down, and it's because I originally pieced these two units to accommodate a little bit different size. During some of my quilt block practices, I've had a few extra blocks come about so that I can use these now in my Quillow project. So for this one here, this particular unit I pieced together while I was making, trying out the steps in making the Washington sidewalk. So it's a variation of the Washington sidewalk. This is the pieced unit that I want when the pillow pocket fully engulfs the blanket. I want this part to show. So this is one piece, and then my second piece is going to be this one. Okay, so now that we have our two pieced units together, and you don't have to piece. You can use just plain fabric, coordinating colors for your blanket, whatever works best for you. So now that we have our two piece units together, cut to the right size, we want to take and sew these units together with right sides facing each other. Then we're going to take and sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around the perimeter of our pieced unit, and we're going to leave a small opening so that we can turn the units right sides out. So I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I will be right back. Now I've completed the 1/4 inch seam allowance around all 4 edges and left a small opening right here. So we're going to turn this right sides out, and then we'll close up the opening and we'll get to the next step. So to turn it right sides out, you just reach into the opening, grab a corner. You can even take and use your fingers to grab that corner, push it in to keep it nice and sharp. All right, and just gradually pull the right side out through the opening. And then to pull out the corners, right, I'm going to actually use, I have this little turnout tool. My finger wasn't good enough for this. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but I'm just going to use that little turnout tool, being careful not to poke holes into the fabric, and just run it along the edge. And then I'm going to do that on all 4 corners just to make sure that I've got them all pulled out. All right, now that we have it turned out, okay, now I'm ready to go ahead and close up this opening. So I'm just going to fold these edges in a 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to take and run a stitch line ever so lightly, maybe 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch, just something to make sure it's closed. So we've closed up our seam, okay, and just sewed a very, very, very faint, very faint line towards the edge. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and press it to make sure that my seams come out nice and sharp and the unit will lay flat. So in this case, I'm just I'm not pushing really hard, but I am pressing towards the edge so that the seams, I can work them out. It's kind of like rolling them out, if you will. So I have this like little portable ironing board or pressing board. I really want to get into the habit of saying pressing, because I think when we're quilting, right, we the goal is to not iron but to press. Ironing, you're pushing the fabric and trying to kind of stretch it out so that it lays perfectly flat and straight. But what that does in our craft is it tends to stretch the fabric or distort the fabric. And we don't want that. That's where our blocks start becoming wonky and we have misaligned or mismeasurements in our finished project. So I'm going to finish doing this and I will come back and see you in a moment. All right, we are now all pressed and we're ready to go ahead and start preparing our unit to attach to our blanket. The next step that we want to do is we want to create a center line. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold this in half. And when you fold it in half, if you've pieced your units together so that you have a design that you want to have facing the, become the pillow front, right? And then you have a design that you want to be on the pillow back, then what you want to do is for the design that you want to have as the front facing portion of your pillow pocket, you want that to be face up. Then you're going to fold your unit in half to make sure that you find the center portion of it. So fold it in half. All right, I'm going to give mine just a very, very light press so that I can see my center line as I'm working with the project. Okay, so we have a very faint pressed line on the outside and very faint down the center. All right, then you're going to want to take the end folds and fold them so that they are right aligned with that center line that you just created. So I'm going to fold this side in, and now I'm going to fold this side in. All right, this becomes your pocket opening. So now that it's folded this way, now I'm going to give these edges a more firm press so that they hold their shape when we go to attach it to our blanket. And to make sure that when I'm pressing this, to get it from here over to the pressing station, I'm just going to give it a couple of pins to keep those flaps in place. So now that we have it pressed, now it's in a state to actually attach to the blanket. But before I do, something I did forget to mention, and I'm going to go back and do it. It is a step that I personally forgot, and this is quilter's choice. It depends on how you're putting your project together. This is 2 pieces of pieced fabric. There is nothing in between. There is no quilting. Since I'm going to make this a Quillow and attach it to a blanket that I use almost all the time, it means it's going to get a lot of washings. So to kind of protect the longevity of the pillow pocket and the fabric, I'm actually going to take this back over to the sewing machine and I'm going to do some stitching along some of my seam lines to help keep my fabric in place. I'll probably just do some stitching around the focus piece, maybe around the center. And what this will do is it will keep the 2 pieces together so that when I'm moving the blanket around or when it gets washed, there's less shifting, which means that the fabric underneath will fray less. So I'll be back momentarily. So I finished my quilting. And I just did around the edges, and I did just a little bit on the center, in the center around the main frame of the main piece that I want to have be on the pillow front, just to give it a little bit of pop. I've also pinned my pocket flaps to the center, okay, and now I'm ready to place it onto the blanket. What I want to do is I want to, depending on how you folded your blanket and whether or not you have binding, right? What you'll want to do is you want to make sure that you center your pillow pocket onto the location of where you're going to secure your pocket to on your blanket. So in our case, I have folded our blanket into thirds, and then I have folded it in half and half and in half. This here is the location where I'm going to attach the pillow pocket, and I'm going to attach it so that the pillow flap opening is running parallel to that edge. All right, this edge is going to be where the initial opening is for the pillow pocket. Now we will turn this upside down, all right, so that our pillow pocket flaps are underneath, and we will center our pillow pocket and line it up. So depending on where you are putting your pillow pocket, you'll either line it approximately an inch away from the edge, or just nudged up next to the binding. Or if you have no binding, you might consider aligning your pillow pocket edge all the way up together. So now that we have it laid and centered where we want to have it, we're going to take a couple of pins and we're going to pin it in place so that it doesn't move on us. All right, so I'm just going to place a pin here, and place a pin here, and that will keep it in place. So now what we are ready to do, in fact, I'm going to put one more pin in here. This will also serve to remind me not to sew on this side, I hope. Okay, so now we're ready to open up our blanket and pin the rest of our pillow pocket in place. So I'm going to just open it up. Now, determining what side you want the pillow pocket on, that is quilter's choice. I decided I want my pillow pocket to be on the underside of the pillow, so that when I'm snuggled up on the couch, wrapped in this nice warm fleece blanket, nobody sees the pocket but me. But when I go to fold it up and put away, the pillow is exposed and it's a nice decorative thing. All right, so now that we have it laid out, we're going to make sure that it's nice and flat. We're going to make sure that our blanket doesn't have any ripples or folds or anything like that underneath it. And I wouldn't necessarily stretch out your fabric. Just make sure that there are no folds underneath it. Now you are ready to pin the rest of this in place. All right, so we're just going to add a couple of pins in to keep it in place while we're sewing our edges down. And when I go to sew around the edge of this, I am going to change out my presser foot for the walking foot, because this is a lot of fabric and I want to make sure that my fabric is feeding as evenly as possible, and a presser foot helps with that. So when we go to attach our pillow pocket, we're going to sew on 3 sides. So we're going to sew around this side, this side, this side, and this side. And we're going to do that at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Then we're going to come back and we're going to sew a second stitch line about 1/8 inch away from our first line. This is going to help reinforce it. So let me go ahead and take this to the sewing machine and we'll come back. Okay, we've sewed our edges down on all 3 sides, and now we're ready to fold the blanket into the pillow. So I folded it in thirds, roughly in thirds, and then I folded it in half on itself and in half again. So then now all we want to do in stage 1, we want to reach inside. See, there's the second flap right here. I'm going to reach under that and pull the quilt into the pocket. So basically you're flipping the Quillow pillow pocket to the outside. Okay, so now you have basically, and it's generous and forgiving. It doesn't need to be 100% neat and perfect, but now you have a pillow. This is like the stage 1 of the Quillow pillow pocket process. All right, so now you have nice folded blanket on the inside, and you have this pillow here, and then you have your envelope here. All right, you can even give it a shake. All right, and now the next stage, or stage 2, okay, is to take and open up your envelope flaps and turn it inside both of these. So here you have the back side of your pillow pocket with the opening this way. Your custom decorative pillow on the front. Another recommendation is to add 8 inches to that measurement so that when you go to put it together, your pillow pocket flaps can overlap. So there we have it, our finished Quillow. I hope that you were able to follow along and maybe even make your own Quillow. And for those of you that are subscribing to my channel, I am humble and blessed by your subscription. And as always, may every one of your quilting journeys be joyful, one stitch at a time.